We are his portion and he is our prize, drawn to redemption by the grace in his eyes. If his grace is an ocean, we're all sinking. And heaven meets earth like an unforeseen kiss, and my heart turns violently inside of my chest. And I don't have time to maintain these regrets when I think about, oh, the way that he loves us. Oh, how he loves us. Oh, how he loves us. Oh, how he loves. Yeah, he loves us. Oh, how he loves us. Oh, how he loves us. Oh, how he loves. So I was born without arms in a small little Romanian village, and because of that, I was put in an orphanage right after birth, and I was malnourished and kind of left alone and really essentially left to die in this orphanage. Then eventually I was adopted at the age of 2 by my loving parents, and Mike and Sharon Dennehy, who just accepted me and brought me into their family and gave me a second chance at life.
Growing up, you learned to play the cello at 8 years old with your feet.
Yes, my parents noticed early on that I was musical, and the story they tell is that I would be very young and I'd watch a movie like a Disney movie or Star Wars, and I would go to the piano and play the music from that movie just by ear. And through that's where they really decided, okay, well, maybe he has a musical ability. And they signed me up to take music lessons with a teacher at our church. And I think one very neat thing I'd like to throw out about this time for me was this teacher. She took it upon herself to learn how to play an instrument with her own feet before even attempting to teach me, because I think for one, I was just a 7-year-old kid. I didn't have a desire really to learn. I didn't really have a desire to play any instruments. But there was that gift that my parents really felt like they could be brought out. So this teacher really went above and beyond. So for me, being in middle school for the first time, public middle school in this new state, and surrounded by all these new people, and this bullying that I started to experience in school, and really beginning to question who I am and question my purpose, question if God is real, if God even loves me, if he's good, because I didn't understand why God made me this way, why God made me without arms. And I began to have doubts and fears and just a lot of anger built up, and it brought me to a very low and dark place in my life where I really just hated myself and I hated the way God made me. And I stopped thinking about how good God was, and I started thinking about how bad my life seemed to be. Even going back to me being adopted and me being a Romanian who was in an orphanage, and thinking that my own parents didn't even want me, and now I'm here in this school, and nobody cares about me, nobody wants me here, people just think I'm a freak. So I really struggled with, why am I even here? Do I even belong here? Do I matter? And it's a hard place to be, but I think it's a place that we all find ourselves at some point in our lives, sometimes multiple times. I can attest to that too. That's a very normal and human struggle to really wonder, why am I here? And I think what matters is, where do we go for those answers, and where do we go for the truth?
And you started to speak to God, at least. You started to say, you kind of challenging him.
I don't know if I would call it praying per se, but I mean, I was kind of talking with God and really expressing my anger, expressing my frustration, because I was very frustrated. So I did grow up in church, and we grew up in Sunday school, and grew up hearing all the verses that we all know about God having a plan for us, God loving us, and things like that, and the Sunday school songs that Jesus loves all the little children. But I was really having a hard time with all of this because I didn't understand why, if Jesus loves all the little children, then why did he forget to put arms on me? Or why did he choose me to not have arms? And I didn't really understand that. So I did get to this place in probably high school where I started to talk to God and just be really angry. And I said, okay, God, if you are so good and if you are real, then fix this for me. You know, fix my life. Give me a miracle. And even more so, I was going to church and I was still looking at my Bible and seeing times in the Bible when Jesus himself was healing people, when he was healing people's disabilities. And I was this disabled kid alone in my room crying and hating myself, and I started to tell God, I said, if you are so real and if you are so good and if you are so loving, then heal my disability, then make me wake up tomorrow with arms. And I kind of thought, couldn't you do that? If you are this God that I've grown up hearing about, who's all powerful, who makes the blind people see and created the world and even created me, couldn't you make me wake up tomorrow with arms so I could be just like everybody else? And I was smart too. I was a little dumb, but I wasn't like a dumb teenager. Like I thought, like imagine if I woke up with arms and then I could go and tell the whole world and be on the news everywhere that I used to not have arms and now I do, and how amazing and how many people could be brought to the Lord through that. And it was kind of my bargaining chip with God, saying, see, if you would do this for me, then I'd be happy, then I would be normal just like everybody else, I'd get what I want, and then I could go testify that to everybody. So I wanted God to do this miracle in my life, and he never did. He never gave me arms, and he never made me normal just like everybody else. But he had something very different in mind.
Well, he did, and you had quite the breaking point and the turning point. One day in youth group, you heard a youth pastor talking about a specific Bible verse, which really brought to light that maybe God was going to use you differently. And you didn't have this miracle in your limbs, but you had a miracle in your heart.
Yeah.
Tell us about what happened.
Yeah, exactly. And it was really in the book of John, chapter 9, when Jesus and his disciples see the blind man on the side of the road, and the disciples ask Jesus about this blind man. They see him and they question kind of, well, what happened to him? You know, why does he not have arms? And then they go on to say, did he sin or did his parents sin? And I'll just say it's so interesting because for me, I get asked questions all the time. It's just part of my life. Ever since I was a little kid, other kids would come up to me and say, what happened to your arms? Where are your arms? And even still, I'm an adult, and adults come up to me and they say, well, can I ask what happened? Can I ask what happened to you? And, I have a much better attitude about it now than I did as a kid, as a teenager. But all that to say, reading the Bible, this ancient text, the Bible, and seeing the disciples also ask about a disabled man, it just really connected with me. But anyways, and they ask if he sinned or if his parents sinned, and then Jesus very simply says that nobody sinned, but he sinned so that the works of God could be seen through him, so that God could use him, God could work through him. And that's kind of, for me, it was reading that when those wheels began to turn, and I began to think, well, maybe God can use me. Maybe even though I don't have arms, maybe God can use me. And it took me a while to get to this place where I began to accept the fact that I don't have arms, accept who I am, and even be thankful for the way God made me. Because you read further in this chapter, and Jesus heals the blind man. So that's really, I read that whole passage in youth group, and then it was after that where I said, okay, God, you healed the blind man, so give me arms. But it was just so amazing the way that God works, because he didn't give me arms, but he ended up giving me eyes, and gave me a new set of eyes, a holy set of eyes where my whole life has been, okay, Lord, use me. The works of God could be seen through him in a mighty way. Yeah. And it's been life-changing and soul-changing ever since. Yes.
And I know that your motivational speaking, as well as the ministry that you do, the music that you perform, is very impactful to people that come across it. You touch on so many points like purpose and identity, and there is so much freedom, actually, that you invite people into with Jesus. It's an interesting concept, too, when you talk about, in some of your speeches, you talk about disability and how it's not exactly what we think it is. In fact, we all carry a specific disability that we're sharing together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. One of my favorite things to do when I'm speaking to a group of people is I love looking at the crowd and saying, and I'm not the only disabled person in here. And of course, what I mean by that is that we're all different, we're all unique, and we all have challenges, we all have struggles. And and for me, when I was going through this time, and the Lord really changed my heart, and not just changed my heart, but He changed my mind. It's a different way of thinking. I began to realize that honestly, for me, it was never about not having arms. To be honest, I think not having arms was the excuse that I had, maybe. But I mean, I figured it out. Like I drive with my feet. I travel from the U.S. to now Canada with no arms, and go through the airport and customs, and I do all of that with no arms. So I figured that out. So I was asking the Lord to heal my disability, and of course I kept saying heal my disability, which meant give me arms. But the Lord really did heal my disability, and my disability being what goes on the inside, and what my own struggles, my own heart, and really my own sin. And that's really something that we all have. We all are born with sin. We all have anxiety. We all struggle with anger and depression and frustration and stress, and not being able to control ourselves, and not being able to stop from making mistakes sometimes. We all struggle, and we all live in a sinful and broken world. Yeah. So essentially we are all disabled in our own ways. Yeah. And we need a Savior. We need hope in our lives. And too often do we reject God and go towards things that we think will give us hope momentarily, and they might momentarily, but eventually we find ourselves back to the place of feeling hopeless.
And George, now you tour, and you go to different churches and organizations, and you speak and you perform, and your message really is one of hope. And in our final moments here together, for that viewer watching right now who's feeling hopeless, and like there's no way forward or out of whatever they're experiencing, what would you say to them?
Yeah, I think for anybody who might be feeling just completely hopeless right now, or that their life might be in so much shambles that there seems to be no end in sight, or no, I guess, light at the end of the tunnel, for lack of better words. I think for me, my life didn't immediately change. My life didn't immediately get better when the Lord opened my eyes and kind of helped reshape my heart. So my circumstances didn't change, is what I'm saying. I still didn't have arms. I still went to school the next day and got bullied. I still got called names. I still got left alone and sat alone at lunch. But my perspective changed. My attitude changed. My character changed. And really how I walked and how I presented myself really began to change gradually. It wasn't an overnight thing. So I think, perspective really matters, and really having a holy perspective, and an eternal perspective. And when you're going through the hardest seasons in life, and the biggest challenges in life, remembering and keeping it at the forefront of your focus that God is in control, that God has a plan, that He has a purpose, and really He is the ultimate artist in this painting that we live in, that being our life. And we, as humans, we're so momentary, where we only see what happens right now, at this moment, what's going on right now, and we react to what's going on right now. And that's a very human thing. But the Lord, He sees the whole picture, and He's painting the whole picture. So for me, it kind of got to a point where I said, don't I want to rest in that? Like if I know that God is in control, and He is perfect, and He has the best interest the best interest for me, then shouldn't I want to find my comfort and find my peace and find my hope in that? And that would be my encouragement to anybody today, is just find that hope, find that comfort in the fact that God is taking care of you, that He has it under control, and that He is the one who's putting the pieces together. And right now it might seem hopeless, it might look hopeless, but one day you'll be able to look back and say, look, God carried me through this.
So many broken hearts, trails of tears and open
open scars of all the enemies you have to face, the one inside of you can't embrace. Thousands of desperate prayers that seem to go nowhere. With every door that closes, one will open. But you won't see that if you don't keep on hoping. We all fall down. We lost but found. To see the light, you've gotta face the dark. 'Cause that's when you find out who you are. The fire will burn, but on the other side you learn that when life gets harder, you get stronger, you get stronger. We've got our wins and losses. We have to bear our crosses. Life's a miracle with no mistakes. Like every star in the sky, you've got your own place. We all fall down. We're lost but found. To see the light, you've gotta face the dark. 'Cause that's when you find out who you are. The fire will burn, but on the other side you learn that when life gets harder, you get stronger, you get stronger. I'm better than I was a day ago, but not as good as I wanna be tomorrow. I'm better than I was a day ago, but not as good as I wanna be tomorrow. I'm better than I was a day ago, but not as good as I wanna be tomorrow. I'm better than I was a day ago, not as good as I wanna be. We all fall down. We're lost but found. To see the light, you've gotta face the dark. 'Cause that's when you find out who you are. The fire will burn, but on the other side you learn that when life gets harder, you get stronger.